welcome back to Angular series. In today's episode, we are going to deep in one of the most important topics in Angular, change detection. We will understand how Angular keeps your UI in sync with your data, why Zone.js was used, its limitations, and how Angular 20 is now moving towards a brand new reactivity system called Signals. By the end, you will know why Angular is replacing at input, at output with input and output signals. Angular's job is to make sure that when data changes in TypeScript, your template reflects it in the DOM. It does this by running a process called change detection. With Zone.js, Angular patches all async events like set timeout, user clicks, HTTP calls, and after each event, Angular checks every component in the tree to see if something changed. So before going to signals, let's understand what is change detection. So what is default change detection strategy? Angular runs change detection for all components in the tree every time an event happens. It can be either click, HTTP response, timer, etc. Even if no data change, Angular will still check all bindings of every component. If you have a large application and multiple components, so Angular by default it will check all bindings of every components, so which will decrease the performance. To increase the performance, Angular team is introduced one more strategy called OnPush. In OnPush, Angular runs CD only if an input value changes by reference or an event triggered inside the components, or we manually call markForCheck or detectChanges. These things we will discuss later, but try to understand what are the differences. Details page we made on push and list page also on push. On push, we'll save it and let's go back to browser. So we can see here the change detection is ran once in all components. Let's clear this console once. And also I added one more click event inside a details component. So this is nothing but a button I just added. So in the button function you can see it's a just console. Using onPush, still the chain detection fires within all components. So you can see here we created ng do check function. I'll explain these functions what it will do, but this is a change detection function where it will check the changes. Here also you can have ng do check. So if you go to browser, even if we are using OnPush, we are seeing change detection triggers in all components. And how the change detection works in default. So change detection starts from main component, then list component, then details component. You can see app.ts is our main component. So whenever we have default change detection, if there is any change in the list or details page, it will trigger change detection of all components. Rebindings also happens here. So this will take longer time if you have lot of components. So which will gradually reduce your performance. So on push, what it will do is if there is any input function. So on push, what it will do is if there is any input, so this combination depends on these inputs. So this component depends on these inputs. So when we use on push mechanism, if there is any input changes or manual function triggers, or there is a separate function called markForCheck and change detection. and there is a separate function called markForCheck and detectChanges. If we are firing these four things, then only any bindings related to this component will change, otherwise it will stay as it is. So this will increase the performance because we are not rebinding all the class rebindings, all the class inputs. So this will increase the performance because we are not rebinding all components. So it will not rebind. So it will check bindings of only that specific. So if you are using on push mechanism here, it will check only bindings of this component. So it will not rebind any other components values, so which will increase the performance. And now we have do check for all the components, but whenever we fire a click event in the details page, or the chain detections runs all the places. You can see here when I fire click let's clear this console. If we fire this click event, this is firing from details page, but the chain detections triggers app ts, student list and details, because Angular still checks all the components, but rebindings will happen only in the particular component, which will not rebind all the components. That is the difference. Still using OnPush, it will fire all the ngDo check functions in all components, but it will rebind only the specific components where the event arrived. Still, this OnPush is manual and tricky, not a beginner friendly. So let's understand what is the problem with Zone.js. Now I believe you got the difference between OnPush and default. So default, whenever any chain detection runs, it checks all the components bindings. So if you are using default, it rebinds all components data, which will consume a lot of time. So if you are using a large application or with lot of components, it is a time consuming process. OnPush still triggers ngDo check, but it only rebinds particular class. If you do a console login ngDo check of every component, you will see all components get visited. That is because Angular always traverses the tree even in on push mode. In default strategy, Angular rechecks bindings always. On push strategy, Angular rechecks bindings only if input is changed. The key difference is OnPush does not stop Angular from traversing the component tree. It only skips re-rendering bindings if no input reference is changed. That is why you still see console logs everywhere. Let's see how Signal is fixing this. So let's go back to student details once. So student is a signal. Angular knows exactly which component use it. When you update it, only those components re-render, not the entire tree. So with signals, your student details would re-render, but the parent app.ts and sibling student list won't even run ngDo check. That is the difference. So which will increase a performance much better. The problem with Zone.js is Zone.js triggers chain detection in every async methods. Debugging chain detection is very hard. Developers often ask, why is my component re-rendering so many times? It requires trick like OnPush, manual detect changes and markForCheck. It will provide a lot of confusion to developers. This is why Angular team is decided to remove Zone.js in Angular 20+. Signals are new reactivity system in Angular. Instead of checking everything after every event, Angular now knows exactly which value changed and which components depends on it. With the signal, no Zone.js, no global patching. Angular only updates components that depends on some value. Let's implement signals here. For input, we have a function called input. So let's comment this. Type of input, which is student. And here also I will change. I'll just comment out this and save it. So now let's go back to browser and try to click on. Now if you see, our application still works. If you hover it, it says input signal. So how to read the values here is, so we need to read signal values like this. So once you save it, go back to the browser, you can still see the same thing. So why signal? So if this is an object, so now we have student as an object. So if you change any properties of this one, if you are using OnPush, by default this will not fire because you are not changing any reference. You are changing only properties of this object, so this will not fire. But with the signal you will be solving that issue, because whenever there is any change with any property here, signal automatically re-renders, so which will reduce a lot of risk. So whenever the student updates, Angular will re-render this component affected bindings, not entire tree. So when student updates, Angular will only re-render these components affected bindings, not the entire tree. No wasted change detection cycle, because if there is any change in the students, it automatically rebinds the HTML. So there is no change in any other places. This is the output function. The difference is O is small, and for output decorator O is caps. This is the function. So O is small. And output is from Angular core. Okay, here we never got any error. Now this is saying argument of type student is not assignable to parameter of type void. By default this emitter type is void, so we need to individually provide type student, then the error goes. This will fix a lot of type safety as well. So let's go back to this one, and whenever there is any click, it automatically captures, so everything works as it is. Signal is reducing our burden, so no need to think about this change detection mechanism. And if there is any change in the signal, it automatically re-renders affected areas, waste any change detection cycle, so which will boost your re-rendering time. So let's create a counter. So let's count equal to signal of 0. So this will create a count signal. You can see student list dot count writable signal with the type number, and we'll also create a function increment this count, we have multiple functions related to this count. So the count is signal. So we have property called set to set new value, count plus 1. So let's use this count here. So how to read signal value? We read signal values with brackets. Let's save. Count does not exist. Count does not exist. Let's add this count. So you can see here 0, and on click of, so this will increment count by 1. You can see the counter is increasing. Let's do one more thing. Let's do one more thing. You can see all the components fired once again, because we are not disabled Zone.js. We are still using Zone.js. During project creation, it gave us a prompt saying that do you want to use Zone.js or not. So we given yes. Because of that, Zone.js is added to our application. So every click, even if you are using signal here, which will again use your Zone.js, so which will get all the components to, which will make all the components to fire this ng do check. So next time when we implement signals, we need to completely remove Zone.js from our project, so there will not be any ng do check for signals. So that's Angular's big change in version 20, moving from Zone.js based global change detection to fine-grained signal-based reactivity. In the next episode, we will go deeper into parent-child communication patterns and how signals make those simpler too. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this with your Angular friends. See you in the next video. This is Nidin signing off.